Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel where each and every week I show people how to make things on the lathe. This week is going to be the second half of the roughing out video that I've done. So if you haven't seen the first part in this 2-video series, I would highly recommend going and watching that, especially if you're new to wood turning and you clicked on this thumbnail thinking that you're going to find out how to make twice turn blanks. Well, you are, but I would highly recommend watching that first video because a lot of times how you use your chainsaw to get to this point is one of the more important things. So go back and watch that. But in this video, we're going to cover coring and, mounting pieces on the lathe for balance, which is really important as well. And I don't know, some other stuff. So anyway, what I'm going to do is I'll show you the stack of wood that we're going to process this week. So yeah, let's do that and then we'll go from there. Right, so here is the stack of wood that we're going to process into bowl blanks. We've got some box elder burl. You can see the red in it. There's some ash down there. Yellow birch burl in the back. Butternuts, maple burl. This actually was cut from the inside of that. There's some cherry in there. All kinds of weird and wacky wood, so I guess they're, for the most part, not weird. This is a good sampling of Canadian hardwoods. Actually, the only thing that's missing out of here is walnut. I don't have any walnut to process in this video. But, there are some pretty spectacular pieces in here, or at least we're hoping that they're going to be spectacular. But you never know until you get them on the lathe and get them turned down and see what you're working with. So anyway, let's get our first piece mounted on the lathe and I'll show you what I mean by balance. All right, so this is going to be our first piece and this is cherry. I'm using a stronghold chuck from One Way and of course the drive center here from One Way as well. Now ordinarily this is a spring-loaded pin, but right now it's kind of seized in there. I did try to free it up, but this is a common problem I find with a lot of these that have these pins that kind of move in and out. So it makes it a little harder to do this. Now, of course, I've got my marker from where we rounded this on the bandsaw. And ordinarily, you can just stick that up there and set it on there and then bring up the tailstock. Might be still able to do that. Might be enough of it to grab there, but... Now, as far as balance is concerned, let me get my pencil and I'll mark out some of the flaws that are on here. Right, so here is the pith. I failed to remove this when we were doing the chainsaw work. And there are cracks that run like that. So, but there's our pith right here. You see that. And on the other side, our pith is right on the edge here, and oh yeah, there is a crack. It runs like that. So, I've kind of done this purposely. If I was out there doing this for bowl blanks, if I see big cracks like this running in this direction, I'm going to cut this off of the saw, and then you're going to have basically board stock either side of this. So anyway, as you can tell, so if your pith, we're only off by say 3/16 of an inch or so, I would say, as far as this being balanced. So we're just going to try and line that up a little better. And what I like to do is bring out the banjo and take my finger and set it on the banjo so that it's right on the pith. And then rotate it and see where it ends up at. And you can tell right now that we're way off here. So, yeah, not having that pin up there really kind of messes with this. And I would say that that's pretty close to being perfect. So, what I'll do now is make sure that I lock down the tailstock. The other thing that I like to do is I've got a little spindle lock right here. So I'll spin this. That will drive the spur deeper into the wood. Tighten it up again. Yeah, so I'm going to have to change my pulley setup. I've got 3-step pulleys here, and right now I've got it on number 3. So I'm going to drop this down to number 2. Just give me a second. There, so that will give you more torque. Keep in mind that, you know, the further that you move away from center, the more mechanical advantage that you have, and it's actually fairly easy to stall this lathe. So by dropping it down, essentially another power setting. I'm going to line this back. I don't know if you heard the belts kind of squeal when I first started this, so that's another reason to do that. But I find that usually the second step pulley, which is, well, it's number 2 on my the diagram here, is usually the setting that I run at. If I've got really large, heavy diameter stuff on here, then I would drop it down to the first pulley, but ordinarily, second pulley will do it. And the other thing before we get started here is, you know, it's probably a good idea to get rid of any bark. The tool edge on your gouges will last a lot longer if you do that. And if you're going to remove it and turn it away anyway, it's in your best interest to do that. So I'm going to get a flat tip screwdriver. And this is such a large bowl blank or piece of wood here that I realize it's probably zoomed out so far that you guys are having a hard time seeing this. So once I get this turned down, I'll basically show you where I'm going to end up with this. And of course, sometimes you're not going to be able to get it all off. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, I don't even bother with it. But, you know, it's a good practice to remove it because you're just, you know, your tools will thank you. Your gouges will thank you. I'm just going to jump in here and say that another reason to remove this bark, especially if it's loose, is so it doesn't hit you when you're turning. Anyway, that's on there pretty good, so we're just going to leave it. All right, so what I'm going to do is bring the camera on this side and I'll show you exactly what I'm looking at here. Right, so here you are on the other side of the lathe. Here is that one crack on this side. The pith is right on the end here. This is for me is pretty much the way that I would like to see it. But you know, sometimes it's very hard to do. Like I said, I'm only out maybe 3/16 of an inch, 1/4 inch maybe. So that's not bad. So there's the other pith area and these cracks. So, you know, we're going to cut this back to about here to good wood. And, you know, this is why you should never leave any pith in any of your work, because that's usually what happens. It usually cracks around the pith area. And again, you know, I'll zoom the camera out here. And, you know, by lining things up with your finger, I mean, there's our pith area. Swing this around and it pretty much lines up with the other pith area. It's off maybe a little bit, I don't know, maybe not. The more that I've tightened this down, it seems to have moved a little bit. You know, and what it is rings. You want these rings to look the same on each side of the bowl so that it doesn't look kind of heavy on one side. So that's what I mean by balance. I mean, we do have some knots in here. You know, this is probably going to be one of these bowls that will be a bowl that I'll fix. There's another knot there. Sorry, you might be hearing helicopters. The military's got a big exercise going on right now. And anyway, I'll cut this back to probably about here, and then I'll bring it back and I'll show you what things look like then. I guess I should also mention what we're going to be turning with, and of course, it's the 5/8 bowl gouge by David Ellsworth. I will usually have 3 of these on the go, and as you can see, they're different lengths. So as you sharpen them, they get shorter. The shorter ones are good for doing the outside profile because you don't really need a long reach. And of course, the longer ones are best for the inside of the bowl. So I've got 2 of these. And of course, this is my favorite gouge that I typically use. And along with that, I've also got this robust gouge that Tracy brought up one year. So I'm going to give this a serious going over this roughing out session, and we'll see, you know, kind of how the edge holds up compared to the Ellsworth gouge. The flutes on this are a lot deeper, but I have ground this to an Irish grind. Not quite, but you know what I mean. That's the grind that I typically like to use. So thanks again to Tracy for giving me this gouge. I really do appreciate it. The thing is, the last time he was up here and gave me this gouge, I haven't really done a whole lot of roughing out since. And now that I'm, mostly doing epoxy stuff, I don't really use a gouge a whole lot. So, I haven't really had a chance to give this gouge a really good evaluation. So, I thought that I would do that in this video. One of the problems that I'm having with this is, of course, it's a deep fluted gouge, and of course the Ellsworth gouge is not. And I've used the Ellsworth gouge now for so many years that after a while it just becomes an extension of your hand. That's the Ellsworth gouge there, and I'm just going back and forth between the two of them, and just to really figure out kind of the best way to use, well, the robust gouge. I already know how to use the Ellsworth gouge. But, I mean, you can see this piece of cherry, there's a really nice grain in this. But anyway, it's when you've used something for so long, sometimes it's just really hard to, move on to a different type of tool. The Hercules was that way, but it was a fairly easy transition for me, actually. All right, we got lots of character in this one, too. And, there's some knots in here. Gee, do you throw away a piece of wood like this because it's got a few knots in it? No, we'll cut these out later and fix this. Now, it looks like there is a little crack there, but, I don't want to get any smaller than this, so I'll throw some CA glue in this, and hopefully it doesn't move any further. You can see, like, we're going to have to whittle away a fair bit of stuff here to make a parabolic shape for our bowl. But, for the most part, the growth rings are pretty much the same size. Yeah, they may be a different shape, but if you look at from here to here and here to here, it's almost the same. So that's really what you're looking for as far as balance is concerned. So anyway, I will trim off the rest of this and get a foot on it, and then anyway, we'll talk about that when I'm done that. So of course, when you're doing a bunch of these, it kind of comes routine. And to be honest with you, I haven't done this in a couple of years, so I kind of forget a lot of this stuff. Well, not forget about it, but just the sequence of events and getting into a groove, and just kind of working through these. This actually took me a lot longer to do than when I was in full production, because I'm switching to epoxy stuff really has changed my turning business, period. But after things are mounted between centers and the balance is good, I'll take a pass on the overall diameter, and hopefully that will true things up and bring things more into balance. And then of course maybe you can pick up the speed. In a case like this, something this size, I don't really see the need to go any more than 1,000 RPM. But it's really going to depend on each piece of wood, especially logs that have been sitting for a while. If the log's been sitting on the ground, it's going to have more moisture in that portion of the log than the upper part of the log. So that's another thing that a lot of people never really think about, but it definitely is a thing. So that is a go, no-go gauge. I highly recommend getting these for each one of your chuck jaws. And then that way it's just a quick reference that that's the maximum diameter that my jaws will hold. And of course on the other side is the minimum diameter that the jaws will hold. And to do bowls, all you really need is a bowl gouge and a parting tool. And that's a 3/16 inch parting tool from Crown. Another great tool company as well. All right, so there's our outside profile done. The one thing that I forgot to do was measure to make sure that this is shorter than a 1/2 inch in depth. Just give me a second here. Yeah, it will be. And the reason why that's important is because when this tenon goes into the chuck, you want to make sure that the top of the jaws are resting on the bottom of the bowl and that there isn't a gap between them, because then it can vibrate loose or, you know, just give you a vibration in general. So that's why it's important to have the top of the jaws resting on the bottom of the bowl. So when you make your tenons, pretty much, well, most of the jaws that come for the stronghold, you need it about a 1/2 inch, just shy of 1/2 inch, and it'll be fine. So the last thing I'm going to do is just take this over to the bench. I'm not going to show this. Knock these off with a chisel on the inside and the outside. I've got my tenon already on the inside, so when we core this, I'll be able to put it in the chuck and then turn a tenon on it, and then or clean off the bottom, whatever I'm going to do with it. All right, so probably what I'm going to do now is set up a time lapse. Yeah, I think I'll set up a time lapse, and if anything pertinent comes along, I'll show you. So, cue the time lapse now. So I actually do like these time lapses. It will give you, other than that scrolling dark and light footage, apparently that's LED lights. But anyway, you'll see basically how things are done in the workshop here, and when you get into a groove and a rhythm, and you know things will definitely speed up. Now, when I was in full production, my goal every year was to rough out between 500 and 600 bowls. And, you know, that may sound like a lot, but if you can get decent sized logs, then of course you can probably get 3 bowls out of each section that you cut. So for every section of the log that you've, basically cut off with the chainsaw, you should be able to get 6 bowls out of that on, say, a log that's, say, 14 inches in diameter or so. But, I don't do this kind of stuff anymore. I really do miss this portion of wood turning. And I talked about this last week where, cutting logs open and seeing the grain in them and like, oh, that's great. And a lot of times it's very disappointing. But, I know that a lot of people just don't have the place or the equipment to do this kind of work. So, they're kind of forced to buy wood that's been through the kiln. But, that'll really, it's an expensive way to be a wood turner. By far the best way and cheapest way to be a wood turner is to get your own logs and process them. But I know that that's not an option for everybody, especially if you're living in the city. I totally get that. But, I really, this is as far as wood turning is concerned, this is the most physically demanding portion of it. The roughing out is what we like to call it for those who are not aware, for the non-turners. So, I really enjoy that aspect of it. But of course, now that I've moved on to epoxy work, it's not so much a thing anymore. But with that said, once we move to the new property, I will be harvesting some of those trees that are on our property, and of course I'll film it, and we'll see how many bowls we can get out of one tree with coring or hollow forms, or whatever it's going to be. It is a renewable resource, and I do plan on using it. I guess that I should show this. So as I turn the outside profiles of these bowls, we're going to put anchor seal on these before we quit today, but I'll chuck them in the shavings and then throw more shavings on top of them, and that way the moisture won't come out of them. Believe it or not, especially if you're working with apple or any of the fruit woods, that they can crack really quickly. So if I'm working with apple wood, I would probably put the anchor seal on it right after it come off the lathe. But in this case, these are fine here. And by the end, you know, I'm probably going to do this for about another, I don't know, probably 2 hours or so. Well, we'll see a lot of shavings here, and these will be all in there. And since the shavings have moisture in them, that will prevent the moisture from really coming out of the bowl and cracking. Very important. So I thought I'd give another view from the other side of the lathe. And one thing that I want to talk to you about is safety. You know, you've got to be really careful when doing this, especially when you're roughing out and mounting between centers. Directly in front of me, you'll see the chop saw, and to the right of it, it looks like there's a piece of wood that's screwed to the wall. It's kind of got like a bowl form to it. And the reason why that's there is a reminder to me that it doesn't matter how safe you are or how good you think you are, bad things can happen, and they can happen rather quickly. And what happened to me was I had a burl mounted between centers, and there was a crack that went all the way through the burl that I didn't see. And I whittled away enough material, and at the time the lathe was doing 1200 RPM, and that thing come apart and hit me in the chest, and it took me off my feet. Now I was uninjured, and I was very lucky that I was uninjured. But you know, I screwed that to the wall in front of me as a reminder that bad things can happen very quickly. All right, so I've got a piece of yellow birch burl on here, and my original thought was to turn this into a natural edge. Most of the big burls that I do that have the bark on the top, or even if they don't, if they're relatively balanced, I turn them natural edge. And you know, you'll have that nice flowing edge on the top. In this case, this one is chewed up pretty badly. I see some cracks here. So, you know, I think that it's probably best to turn this away and then just make a normal bowl with this. I don't know, maybe we'll close this in a little bit. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know until I'm actually working with it. Now, of course, you've got a big heavy pocket here. How is it running? Yeah, so it's pretty heavy on this bottom right here. But if you wanted your natural edge, if you wanted a natural edge bowl, then of course you would have to move this and try and orientate it so that, you know, these wings would match up. But the thing is, where this is here, there's nothing on the other side. So, you know, that's another reason to turn it just into a normal bowl. Yeah, I can see some cracks down here. So anyway, that's what we're going to do. Maybe with that really large burl, we'll try and do that. It's got about 2-inch thick bark on it, so that should be a ton of fun. Anyway, I'll tighten this down, and I don't know, maybe I'll just turn this one with high-speed footage. The other thing too, you know, when you make sure you dial down your speed. I had this one up on, let me see what we've got here. 760, and if you had to turn this on, it may not be all that great for you. So always dial your speed down, turn it on. It's always a good idea not to stand in front of the throw of the lathe. Yeah, so that's 300 RPM, and yeah, I don't think I'll go any more above that until we can get this all trued up. As far as processing wood for wooden bowls, the best time of the year to cut your trees is in the wintertime. And the reason for that is a lot of the water is out of the tree because the leaves have come off the tree. And ordinarily, I mean, you just would be sprayed with water otherwise. If you cut a tree down in the summertime and put it on the lathe, it's going to be like somebody sprayed you with a hose. That's how much water is going to come out of it. Actually, on my chop saw station, there's a big kind of watermark stain on the front of it, and that's because the lathe's sitting in front of it and it's being sprayed with water. The other thing too is if you want to make natural edge bowls where the bark is on the top, you definitely need to cut those trees in the wintertime, because if you cut them in the summertime, the bark and the wood will shrink at a different rate, and then the bark will in all likelihood fall off. Pretty wild looking spalting, actually. That's some goodness right there, let me tell you. So the other thing too is if I had turned this into a natural edge bowl, this would have been all turned away. Yeah, we got some punky grain down here, but this can be stabilized. But by going natural edge, I would have turned all this away. So that's another decision that I think I made correctly. Very cool. So I know that the spalting isn't for everybody. For me, especially working with birch, I would purposely let my birch logs sit around and spalt. And over the years, a lot of people have asked me, well, how do you do that? And it's very easy. Make sure that your processing area is in the shade, and leave the logs on the ground, and Mother Nature will take care of the rest. Since birch is so bland, I typically would do this with almost every birch log that I got to get some color in it, get some hopefully some pencil line spalting is really what I like to see. The only thing is that it's a battle against the bugs. Who's going to get into the wood first? You or the bugs? So, what I would do is after a year of laying there, I'd go out and cut a piece off of the end of one log. And the other thing too is I would anchor seal the ends of the logs just to lock that moisture in there. And then, go out every now and then, cut a little section off, see how it looks, and look for bug holes. And as long as there's no bug holes, then, it's probably safe to leave for maybe another half a year. But I found that it typically would take about a year and a half for it to get to the level of spalting that I like to see. You'll also see that it looks like there's two tenons here on the bottom. But what I'm doing is one of those tenons will be to hold the bowl so that we can core this. And of course, the other one is going to be the foot, because that tenon that's on the bottom would be too small of a foot for your bowl. And a general rule when you're roughing out bowls as far as foot size is concerned, it's 1/3 the diameter is what you're looking for. That's the rule of thumb as far as the size of the foot area that you want in your bowl. Now, I was doing some shear scraping here with the robust gouge, but you can see there's some pretty nasty little marks in it, and I just couldn't get it, and I switched to the Ellsworth gouge, and then I was able to get a cleaner surface. And I think a lot of that's got to do with the tool geometry. The robust gouge seems to dip off a little further than the Ellsworth gouge that I'm using there. It's kind of straight, and I find that it's easier to shear scrape with that than with the robust gouge. But as far as holding its edge is concerned, the robust gouge with the Ellsworth gouge, I didn't really see a noticeable difference at all. But look at that spalting in that log, in that piece of wood. Absolutely love it. Crazy. And birch is one of the easiest to get that spalting in it. That and soft maple. Yeah, awesome. Now I know that foot may look a little larger than 1/3 the diameter, but keep in mind that after this dries, it's going to warp and twist. So by the time you get that foot trued up again, you could easily take a 1/2 inch to 1 inch off of its overall size. So all we're going to do now is just whittle off the bottom here, use the cut salt sander and grind it down, and then mark it, yellow birch burl, and the year. I didn't put the month in, but ordinarily I would, but since this is the only wood I've processed this year, I figured that would do. Whew. Well, you know, I was hoping for better production than this today, but you know, just we're trying to get things packed up here, and anyway, it's been a chore. Okay, so before I quit today, I'm going to throw some anchor seal on the outside of these. That way they don't crack. So just like last week, we're going to be using anchor seal again. And I use the glycol formula because we're in Canada and it freezes. This is just an old paint tray. We'll start with that amount. And it's just an old roller that I've got on here. I've used this for many years actually. I just wrap it up in a bag and then it never, it's a little hard now, but it's been a while since I used any of this anchor seal. But I'm sure it will work just fine. Now I wear gloves, but I really don't think that you need to with this stuff. It's a liquid wax that will dry clear. I'll get something to show it to you. You know, again, this is some of that spalted maple from last week, and it was white when it goes on, and when it dries, it's clear. Now this is called an end grain sealer, but I don't just do the end grain, I do the entire piece. Yeah, hopefully this softens up because it's kind of hard. Yeah, since I haven't used this in a while, it didn't work all that great. So I abandoned this idea and just used my hands. But ordinarily it does work very well, but haven't used it in a while. Well, that's one. Anyway, I'll do the rest of these and I'll bring you right back. Well, that's all we got done today, and a little disappointing in that. Anyway, I had some stuff going on here in the background that was taking up some time, but you know, some decent bowl blanks here, or soon to be bowl blanks, and especially that one there. I know some people may be wondering why I tilted the rim on it. I don't know, I was just looking for a different style. Same thing with that one, same idea. And this one. So anyway, we got 7 here. 1, 2, 3, 4 cherry, 1 hickory, a maple, spalted maple, and spalted yellow birch burl. Rest of them are under here. I think there's like another 8 maybe under here. And of course, there's the mountain of shavings just from today. Anyway, that's going to do it for today. See you guys tomorrow. Hopefully I can get the rest of these done tomorrow. Anyway, we'll see you then. Well, good morning. As you can see, our anchor seal is now clear, well, clearish. So yeah, I know a lot of times when people see me putting this on, they think that it's like a latex paint, but it is not. It's a wax that dries clear. Let's unearth our pieces of wood and get some stuff mounted on the lathe and get it done today. Hopefully. The outside profiles anyway. All right, so I've got the really big maple burl on the scale here, and that's sitting at 31.8 kilos, and that's 70 pounds. So yeah, I figured we'd get the big one out of the way first before we did anything else while I'm fresh. Whew, that's heavy. Whew. All right, so when you're working on natural edge pieces like this, you can see how thick this bark is. You know, it's probably close to, I would say, 1.5 to 2 inches thick. So of course, I think this is the area where we're going to be pushing on. So you need enough room that, you know, your your live center can fit into here. So I'm just going to use a Forstner bit, try and grind down a little area here. I got nothing to push on though, so we might have to switch out to the Kutzall sander. But anyway, it's important to get down a really good wood so this doesn't come off the lathe. Well, it's 70 pounds, so you don't want this, you definitely don't want this coming off the lathe. There, that should do. Hopefully. All right, so first thing that we want to do is pick this up and set it on the pin. That's probably going to be the hardest thing. Yeah, it's too bad that there's some bark missing here. I mean, I'm still going to do this natural edge, but it's too bad that, you know, bark's missing there. Anyway, it will make a really, really nice natural edge bowl, but it's too bad that all the bark isn't on this piece. Surprisingly enough, it's actually balanced pretty nicely. Trying. The other issue too with this stuff is, so this is a 20-inch general, so that means you can turn 20 inches over the bed, and you can't really get your banjo, the thing that holds the tool rest, underneath of this piece until it's all trued up, and even then it might be hard to do. So anyway, that's another thing when you're working with these really large pieces. If I had to cut this 20 inches, I probably would not be able to get this mounted. This was cut at 18 inches. Anyway, let's try and line up our natural edge the best that we can. It doesn't look too bad, to be quite honest with you. Yeah, it actually looks pretty good. It's a little off on this side, but that's all right. The important thing is up here to make sure that this is running relatively the same. Like your wings are the same height on each end. And as you can see, they pretty much are. There's going to be some variations, but hey, that's not bad. I'll take it. All right, I'll get my safety gear on and we'll get at this. So as you watch me whittle this away, I'll just briefly talk about the anchor seal again. So the whole idea is that it slows down the release of moisture coming out of the wood. The reason why wood cracks is because moisture leaves it too fast. So by sealing, you know, the inside and the outside of these pieces, well then, you know, it's forced to lose its moisture very, very slowly. And because it does that, there's less tendency for cracking. Now, an acceptable loss is between 10 to 20% of your bowls. So, you know, if you're roughing out, you know, if you need 500 bowls, then you better rough out 600 if you're not going to be doing any epoxy or anything like that, because you are going to have some loss. You are definitely 100% going to have some loss. So keep that in mind if you decide to do this. Boys, it sure is busy. I love it. Just wish it was mine. There's a really nice pencil line spalting in it too. I don't know. Hopefully there's more of that deeper down inside of here. But yeah, what a spectacular piece of wood. And the balance, I think the balance is just perfect on it too. Well, we got a long ways to go here. We're going to lose, I would say, at least another inch off the diameter of this, possibly more. as I try to cut this in towards the foot. So to do a recap, ideally you're going to get your logs in the wintertime, and as soon as you get them, you're going to put anchor seal on the ends until you can process them, and they're going to be put into the shade. It's fine to put a tarp over them. That's what I usually did in the wintertime. That way, of course, the snow doesn't get down between them. And then if you have a warm spell and it melts and then it freezes, it's a real pain to try and break free from the ground. It's not so bad if you got a tractor like I have now. But in the past, I didn't have that. So then, you know, you're out there with 6-foot crowbars trying to pry frozen logs up from the ground. Trust me, you don't want to go there. It's not any fun. I'm just going to throw that out there. But, you know, that's pretty much the ideal way that I would get my logs. And I know that I covered this a bit last week too. You know, firewood producers, arborists, they're great sources for this kind of, for this business. And a lot of times, you know, maybe all they really want in return is maybe a finished bowl or two. And then, you know, you get the rest of the tree. So it's a win-win for everybody. Sometimes you have to buy them, and I don't have a problem buying wood either, as long as it's something that's good and something that I need. That's probably the biggest thing. You got to be really careful when you're buying wood. I've got burned a number of times over the years because you really don't know until you cut that log open or that burl open if it's any good. That burl that I cut, that really large burl that I'm working on now, I could have cut that off of that tree section like I did last week, and it could have been completely hollowed, and you know, you'd be out a ton of money, because a burl this size, you know, they're not super expensive, but whatever you've got invested in it, you certainly can lose it quite easily just because the burl is hollow or rotten. That's just the way it is. And you know, sometimes when you're looking at a piece of wood, you cannot tell if it's rotten or, you know, bad in the center. So, you know, sometimes you just have to bow to Mother Nature and congratulate her on the things that she's made. I mean, this is just an amazing burl. Really hoping that we can dry this without it cracking, but I guess we'll find out. But what a stunning piece of wood, and huge too. Like this thing is just, it's massive. Yeah, wow. Anyway, this should be really interesting decor. It's a little out of balance. I can see a crack running down here. So hopefully that's not going to be an issue, but I don't want to take any more off the size of this. Anyway, I mean, it's just an impressive piece of wood. That's for sure. Might even weigh this and see what it weighs now. See how much weight we've taken off this. Right, so I got it on the scale here, and we're looking at almost 20.5 kilos. And that is, well, a little over 45 pounds. If I can get the glare out of there. Yeah, a little over 45 pounds. So, you know, that's pretty impressive. I didn't think that I would have removed that much weight from this, but, well, scales don't lie. Anyway, there's not really a whole lot more here. That's that end grain one. I might bring you back for that. But the rest of these, I don't know, I might set up a time lapse. But I noticed that the time lapse has kind of dark things kind of scrolling through it. So anyway, I don't know if there's really much else here that's going to be spectacular. I certainly will show them all at the end, but maybe we'll come back for that butternut one. The rest of these, well, I don't know. I might set up the camera and run some high-speed footage, but either way, got to get these done today. That's the goal anyway. All right, so this is the last one for the day. This is butternut. I am a little leery about putting this in my stock. I have found a number of bugs in it already. So part of the issue is if you're going to put this stuff into your dry stock to dry, make sure you remove all the bark that you can, because the critters will be usually hiding in the bark. This one here has got This is going to be very hard to clean up. But you know, it's butternut, so that's the main reason why I'm going to turn this. And it's end grain too, so that's completely different from most wood turning bowls, or you know, they're side grain bowls. They're not end grain bowls, so the grain is running in this direction. But you know, we've got some large limbs on this, so down inside of this, it should be actually, hopefully, some decent grain in there. So anyway, this is going to be my bottom. I don't know. I might just end up leaving this, just turning the outside profile of it and leaving it like this. But anyway, it's something different, so I thought that I'd show you that. And it's really out of balance too, so that's not going to be a whole lot of fun either. That's 140 RPM, so pretty slow. So for the non-turners, I will explain side grain and end grain bowls. Essentially, if you cut a tree off and you look down on the stump, that is all end grain. And that end grain will expand and contract at a greater rate than traditional side grain bowls that you see the majority of wood turners make. And just picture a bunch of straws stood on their end. That's essentially what end grain is. If you look at it under a microscope, that's essentially what you're looking at. So of course that's going to absorb a lot more water and lose a lot more water than your traditional side grain bowls that you see most wood turners make. And now you know. I do find that butternut, being a soft wood, for whatever reason, is actually pretty hard on tools. I seem to need to sharpen a lot more with butternut than a lot of other woods. I don't know if it's when it grows it picks up silica or what the deal is, but I find it to be very abrasive. And probably the main reason why you don't see a lot of end grain turnings like that is because, first of all, they're harder to dry than traditional side grain bowls are. Even though a side grain bowl does have end grain in two ends of it and then side grain on the other. But, you know, with the expansion and contraction of the wood being greater than side grain bowls, it does have a tendency to crack more often. A lot of burls are actually all end grain, so that's why sometimes it's hard to dry a burl without cracking, because you encounter the same sort of issues with this. So I'm going to turn this into a hollow form and basically dry this the way it is, and of course there'll be a big resin pocket on the side of it. So that should be cool after we move, and I'll let this sit around for 6 months like I do the majority of these wood turnings, and then I'll start rotating them through the fridge kiln. That way you'll have less loss in the fridge kiln, or in the kiln period. And this is probably the main way that most wood turners will rough out their pieces. They'll rough them out, seal them with the end grain sealer, and then stick them on the shelf for 6 months to dry, and then put them through the kilns. It's just faster, and you'll have less loss doing it that way. Especially if you can get them through a winter cycle. And again, wherever I can, if I can get that bark off, I'm going to remove it, because if there's going to be critters in this piece, it's going to be where the bark is. And I got rid of that because it was never going to stay there either. Right, so anyway, there's going to be a really large resin pocket, and obviously this, well, it could be an enclosed bowl. Definitely lots of color in it. I'm going to see if this will fit in my microwave, and if it will, I'm going to throw it in there for probably 10 minutes, and hopefully that will kill any bugs that are in there. If not, I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do, to be perfectly honest with you. I might just throw it in my trailer when we move, and then just kind of put it aside until such time that I can actually make sure that all the bugs are out of it. Anyway, let me try the microwave, and I'll show you what all the pieces that I did today. Okay, what you're hearing there in the background is the microwave. I was able to get it in there just barely. That one flat spot that's on there allowed me to do that. If I didn't have that, it wouldn't fit. I'll show you what we got here before I throw the anchor seal on them. spalted box elder burl right in it. Some real nice crotch grain up here. This is the top part of that maple burl. And let me move this out here, maybe we can get some light on here. And I decided to just leave this as it is. The end grain is off a little bit on it, but there's not much I can do about that. But you know, maybe this will be Lazy Susan, something like that in the future. But I thought I would leave it this thick for now. Now any of these pieces that do have cracks in them, what I've done here is filled it with the thin CA glue. And this is spalted hickory. Nice black lines in the hickory, it's kind of cool. Not a huge fan of hickory, don't care for the color for it, but color of it. But when it's spalted, it actually looks kind of neat. Again, another box elder burl piece, pencil line spalting, crotch, grain. Overall, it means it's a pretty bowl. Really nice crotch grain right here. Get the lighting right. Couple of really large ash pieces. Again, this is going to be a crotch right here. Not a ton of grain in it though, maybe deeper down inside of it. A little bit right here. Stay. This is a better example of it. Again, I put some more, there were some cracks up here, so I put some CA glue on them. It's another reason to have thin CA glue, migrate down and seal them cracks. I throw some on these knots. But you know, you've got some crotch grain here, and there's crotch grain here. Yeah, white ash is what this is. And of course, well, our butternut piece is in the microwave. Cooking up some butternut. I guess we're not done for the day. I just took this out. Actually, it was steaming. Anyway, this has been in the microwave for 20 minutes. And as you can see, this anchor seal is almost cured on it because it's so hot. And I forgot about our big burl. How could I forget about the big burl? Anyway, it's all covered in anchor seal now. Now we'll see you tomorrow for coring and final shaping. Well, good morning. We are all set up and ready for coring. This is the one-way coring system from oneway.ca. I've got my number 4 knife set in, and of course we're going to be using the Core Pro cutter for all of the coring in this video. So there is my number 4 template, and the idea with these templates is that it moves the base away from the headstock, and that way you don't go through the bottom of your bowl, because you really don't want to do that, especially the outside bowl. Now, I've got all of my other templates here that I need. I've even got one that's a dry template for when I'm doing some resin stuff. So, you know, Dale Nish does a really good job on the one-way media portion of their website. So if you go to oneway.ca, at the very bottom, there's a media tab, and Dale Nish explains the complete setup of this. So, you know, I'm not going to go through this. I have done this on previous coring videos. I just need to get this done so that I can start packing up my workshop, because, well, I haven't really started yet. and I'm running out of time. So anyway, I'm going to go for the big bowl first. I just want to remove some mass here. I did have to turn a mortise on the inside of this, and I'm hoping that there's going to be enough meat there that I'll be able to reverse this and then bring up the tailstock, and then I can turn another tenon on this piece and then put it in, and so on and so on. The normal way to do this would be to go for the smallest bowl next, then the next size, then the next size. you know, you'd have to lay it all out, but you know, that's kind of tough to do on this natural edge. And it's also hard to hold this piece. I'm a little worried about this coming off without some tailstock support. So that's why I'm going for the big one first. All right, well, that's it. Let's get to it. So I can't stress this enough. If you are going to be doing bowls, get yourself a coring rig. Yes, there's some sticker shock to it, but you know, if you look at the two burl bowls that come out of here, you know, they're probably got a value of $4 or $5, potentially even more than that, $100. So, you know, that's the cost of your coring rig essentially right there. The Core Pro cutter is not cheap, but I will say that it will make your coring experience so much better, and I do recommend getting one. And I'm so glad that it was recommended to me, because using the old cutters was a real pain. The bar here is hitting on the live center, so I'm going to have to put in an extender. So people are going to ask where I got this tailstock extender, and of course it came from Johnny Tully, so thanks again for that, Johnny. Unfortunately, I don't think they're commercially available anywhere. I've never seen them. Anyway, leave a comment down below if you know where you can get them. I really prefer not to cut these off, because when you do that, things can pinch and things get twisted. So I'm usually not a fan of just cutting these off. Well, there's a normal size bowl. That's an awesome core. Be able to get 2 more out of this. Anyway, yeah, I'm gonna have to move this outboard when we get all done coring and clean this up, because this is way too thick, especially down in here. Considering that, you know, my spacer is a good solid inch away from the base, so we'll have to go in at least another inch into the bottom of this to clean this all out to make it an even wall thickness. But what we'll do right now is turn a foot on this and then get it mounted on here and take out the second core. If you're roughing out traditional bowls without the natural edge, then you can just leave the mother bowl in the chuck and reverse it like you see it here on the screen and push that into the mother bowl. And then once that's lined up, then you can turn your tenon on the bottom of that instead of taking the mother bowl out of the chuck and then trying to do things that way. But of course, when you've got a natural edge like this, it's well, pretty impossible to do that. So that's why you're pretty much forced to do it this way. Now, I'm shooting for 1 inch wall thickness for every 10 inches in diameter. So a 20-inch bowl is going to be 2 inches thick. And you need that room because when wood dries, it warps and twists. And if it's too thin, you may not be able to chew it up. All right, there we go. I'll just mount this back into the chuck and, you know, do it in expansion mode. Put another foot on the bottom of this, and then I'll be able to clean up the inside of this when I'm doing all of basically the trimming for thickness. So I'm just going to show one more of these being cored. You know, it's very repetitive. I did shoot a ton of footage for this video, but you know, it's an hour and 10 minutes long as it is, and well, as of right now, I still need to add to it. Anyway, if you've been debating on getting a coring rig, to give you an idea of all the pieces that were saved out of these blocks today, I would say that there's probably close to $1,000 in finished turnings. So like I said, it will not take you very long to get your money back on a coring rig. Because look at that. Can you imagine that going to shavings on the floor? Just would not be cool. Beautiful. Mother Nature at her best. So we're just going to turn a small little foot on this. That way I can take out the inside on the outboard end. I did not core the rest of this. Just time constraints mostly. Right, well, that's all we're going to do for coring. You know, if we were staying here, I would probably do a little bit more, but we're not. So I'm getting kind of short on weight inside my sea container. So we still have to trim these up. And of course, those two are going to stay the way they are, and we'll have to take the centers out of these. Anyway, I'll sharpen up the gouges, and we'll try and finish this video up. So as a general rule, I typically do not core anything that's smaller than 10 inches in diameter. I've got half my drying shed is bowls that are 10 inches and smaller, and while they're fairly easy to sell, you have to turn a lot of them to kind of get your money back. So, you know, in most cases, I'm not going to go for those smaller cores. If they're epoxy turn pieces, then yes, I'll go for the smaller bowls. But at this stage, I usually don't. It's a good thing they're tough at this age. So the last thing they'll really talk about as far as, you know, this video is concerned, as we watch me clean up this really large burl, is the even wall thickness through your bowls is the key to success for drying. If you have a bowl that, say, is thinner at the rim than it is at the base, then that is going to dry at a different rate, and in all likelihood you're going to end up with some cracking. So make sure that your even wall thickness is throughout your bowls, and hopefully you won't have any problems. Okay, so that took about an hour and 15 minutes to take the insides out of these. I'll show you these again. That's going to dry the way it is. Same with that piece of butternut with that big resin pocket on the side should look pretty nice. This maple burl, wherever my tape measure went to, this maple burl is 13.5 inches on the inside and pretty much 17 inches on the outside. So that is a very large bowl. And the shavings, now of course these are compost if you wanted to. There's nothing wrong with these to go to a compost facility. You can use it as mulch in your gardens. But my buddy is actually going to take these. You know, there's a lot of people burn wood in this area, so it's great fire starter material once it dries out. Of course, right now it's pretty wet. But anyway, put a bunch of that under your logs before you hit it with the match, and it actually works very well. So there's probably 2 or 3 garbage bags here for him to get. And this is probably only half of what I've done so far in this video. So anyway, let me throw a camera on a tripod here, and we'll do some show and tell on the bowls, and then we'll finish this video up. All right, let's start with some of the really cool, interesting pieces. The spalting on this yellow birch burl is pretty crazy, actually. I mean, look at that. Move this light over here so we get maybe some better light. I mean, it's nuts. Beautiful stuff. There's no anchor seal on this one at all because it was a core. And of course, maple burl, we've seen that a lot here on the channel. And it's going to be a really, whoa, if you don't drop it, it's going to be, I still got to put it on the bottom what it is. Anyway, you can't go wrong with maple burl. Can't talk anymore. This is a piece of white ash, and of course this was a crotch piece. Some people might refer to this as olive ash because it kind of looks like olive wood. Again, no anchor seal on this one at all either. A little cherry bowl, not really, you know, much to write home about. And I mean, this, people are going to say, like, why didn't you take the center of this? Well, it would only be about 1 inch tall. So that Sometimes it just isn't worth it. And, you know, the fact that we're moving is another reason why I didn't. But, hey, it's cherry, and cherry is really nice. Again, more cherry burl. This one's actually quite a bit heavier. It must be denser. That's a nice little bowl. More ash. And, you know, one of the problems with turning crotches, and you'll see it here, this is all that's really holding this piece on. So, you know, if you're standing in front of this, you know, I'm not going to harp on people that just wear glasses when they're turning. But if you're standing in front of this and you cut down past here and that thing comes off and it hits you in the face, I guarantee you it'll probably be the last time you don't wear a shield when you're doing this. Because can you imagine that sharp edge? Right here, that catching you. Anyway, that's why I always wear a shield. But hey, if you don't want to wear a shield, that's your prerogative. There's some more cherry crotch with a chunk missing out of it. So we'll have to fill that in with resin. I mean, there's a lot of future, like a lot of these bowls have condition issues. And I would never have touched these in the past, to be perfectly honest with you, when I was doing this as a production turner, because there's just way too much stuff to fix and the market is too small for that. In order, you know, to fix a large cherry bowl like this, once you've got all this work into it, you know, it could be $600, and it's just, that's a tough sell, especially after the vid, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to say it on air because YouTube doesn't like us talking about the vid, you know what I mean, with a C. Anyway, maple burl. Nice natural edge. This will clean up nice. Hopefully it dries without any flaws. Really nice spalting on the back side of it as well. Yeah, that's a beauty. Box elder burl, or in Canada, Manitoba maple is what this is. I know a lot of people, when I say box elder, they don't know what it is, but when I say Manitoba maple, they understand what it is there. And, you know, this has got some really nice grain up in it here too. Again, you know, this is an 8-inch bowl, and that's why I didn't core this. Because of the size of it. Look at that chatoyance there. That's going to be really nice. But this, you know, because of the size of it and the fact that it's Manitoba maple, like it's kind of a weed species. It does produce some nice pieces, but you know, you've only got so much time. And anyway, this is a pretty piece of wood, and we'll finish this out for sure at some point. Lots of chatoyance in this are going to be future piece anyway, all up in here. This was a crotch piece as well. Spalted hickory. This is a new one for me, not hickory, but you know, it's laid around long enough that it's got these black lines in it, which is actually kind of cool. So we'll definitely finish this one on the channel. Now there's some cherry, and that's going to be just full of character. Well, it is full of character. It's not going to be. It is. Nice wide rim on this. There's the profile. So, you know, I'll be able to do something with that. Big old ugly knot here, but around all these big knots is all this really nice compression grain. So, you know, you take the good with the bad. Some more hickory. Yeah, not a huge fan of hickory. It's just the color, I think, is what I don't really like, and I think the vast majority don't like it either. It does have a little bit of pencil line spalting in it. And our last one, again, box elder burl, Manitoba maple. Yeah, got some character in this one too. This will be one of those basket cased bowls. There, and there. Down in here. and this really dark spalted area here. Mother Nature, eh? Something else. All right, that's it. I'm going to throw some anchor seal on this, and then we'll finish this video up. Well, that's going to do it for the video. You know, it's funny. I seen a lot of comments last week about people saying, "Oh, it's nice to see behind the scenes." But you know, I see the roughing out process as being probably one of the most important parts of being a wood turner. Cutting your wood properly and drying your wood properly are the keys to success as far as being a wood turner is concerned. So, you know, I don't really see this type of work as behind the scenes, but, you know, I get it because I do a lot of epoxy work now that, you know, I don't seem to really get into the nuts and bolts of, you know, roughing out in that aspect of this trade. But, you know, it's like I said in the video, like I absolutely love roughing out. It's physically demanding. There's no doubt about it. And I know that not all people can do this job because it can be, you think about slinging around logs for 2.5 months, big heavy pieces of wood, you know, after a while it would take me about 2 weeks to get back into what I would call working shape, where, you know, my body didn't bother me as much as it would the first couple of weeks. But after that, then I was fine. And I really enjoy the process, seeing those shavings coming off. And, you know, as far as trying to learn wood turning, you know, if you're a brand new wood turner, start with green wood. Any found wood, start with easy woods like, you know, poplar and soft maple. Stay away from soft woods because you're going to have pitch in them and this kind of business. But, you know, the softer hardwoods are really nice to learn on, and you can really develop your skills from there because the difference between roughing out and finish turning is big. Like there's a big difference. So once you get your technique down with roughing things out, then you can move on to finish turning, which of course is a lot harder because the wood's dry. Now you're working with dried wood. But I think the key when you're a new wood turner is to get that green wood on the lathe and just whittle pieces away. Don't worry about it and just work on your skills. All right, I don't really know what's going to be happening next week, to be honest with you, because as I'm filming this, you know, we're getting ready to pack up and move, so I don't know. I know that last week's video does have some pretty low views on it. I know that Florida's been dealing with a terrible hurricane, and you know, my heart goes out to people that have lost their houses and lost their lives and all the other things that are going on with that hurricane. So, you know, we are thinking about you up here. Don't think that we're not. We certainly are. So anyway, good luck to those folks in Florida and, well, other parts of the U.S. too. It's not just Florida. But anyway, from the news, Florida looks to be the worst hit spot. But anyway, we're thinking about you. All right, well, that's it. On that note, take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence on YouTube. And hey, if you haven't subscribed, please do that. That way we can get more people on board here and I can give some more free stuff away. See you next week.